Welcome everyone. Ami Tsep Kokwilam. Bonjour à tous. Je suis Annalisa King. Je suis ravie d'être ici encore pour représenter mes collègues au conseil d'administration. Bienvenue à notre assemblée publique annuelle. Cette réunion durera 1 heure. My name is Annalisa King, and I'm delighted to be here today. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the Airport Authority team, I'd like to welcome you to this virtual annual public meeting. This meeting will be 1 hour in length. 2020 a été une année pas comme les autres dans l'histoire de notre aéroport. Un défi pas comme les autres. Pas depuis la Seconde Guerre mondiale, nous n'avons eu une telle transformation à YVR et un tel défi pour toute notre équipe de Sea Island. Et nous sommes certains que la pandémie aura des implications durables, bien au-delà des changements que nous assistons aujourd'hui, tant sur le plan économique que pour l'humanité. 2020 was like a year no other in the history of our airport. Not since World War II have we had such a transformation at YVR, and such a challenge for our entire Sea Island team. And we are certain that there will be long-lasting implications from the pandemic, well beyond the changes we know of today, both economically and for humanity. However, with every crisis comes opportunity. The YVR team has weathered this historic challenge of this global pandemic, and in doing so has taken the opportunity to reimagine the role of the airport and the meaning of what it is to be a gateway. We are confident that this approach of managing offense and defense has set the airport up to emerge towards our future with vitality and ready for new opportunities and challenges. And 2020 also welcomed the beginning of a new era for YVR with a new president and CEO, Tamara Vrooman, starting in July. Her enormous passion, creativity, and experience in purpose-driven transformation has invigorated YVR with a new strategic plan for the future. Today, you will hear from Tamara, as well as Diana Wong, Vice President Finance and CFO, who will talk about the team at YVR, their unwavering focus on health and safety, and their steadfast commitment to taking care of our passengers, our customers, our business, our community, our planet, and most importantly, our people. They also talk about YVR's bold vision for the future. Seated in the success of our past, this vision will ensure the airport is taking care of the future and is positioned to thrive this year and beyond as a gateway to the new economy. Before we hear from Tamara and Diana, I have the honor of recognizing that YVR sits on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. It is a privilege to operate the airport on the lands the Musqueam call Ta Shwumist, home. And it is my distinct pleasure to play a video greeting from Councillor Rosalind Campbell, who will provide some remarks from Musqueam.
Asiem Nasiea, Antha Thithiliwit, Italitzen at Humusqueam. Amid Sap Kothuilam, at Tamuch Kusasiwanis at Humusqueam. Honored guests, respected friends, elders, my ancestral name is Thithiliwit, and I welcome you here to the traditional, ancestral, unceded lands of the Musqueam people. Iia Squasathan. Where we are today, where I'm standing today at YVR Airport, the Musqueam people refer to this area as Squasathan. I wanted to share that with you. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our friends at YVR for welcoming me here today to do this welcome for YVR's annual public meeting. I was here a year ago, and we were just at the start of this pandemic. And we didn't know what was before us, what was going to be coming in this past year. There have been challenges for all of us on a personal level and business and employment. And I just wish to take a moment to acknowledge that it's affected each and every one of us. We've all had difficult times. But I'd also like to acknowledge the positives that have happened over this past year. And that includes the vaccinations. At this time, we're in the midst of administering the vaccinations, and that's to help us get out of this pandemic. And I'd like to acknowledge that YVR too is doing its part in that it has a vaccination clinic here on site. I would like to take time to acknowledge Musqueam and YVR's friendship agreement. I would be remiss if I did not take an opportunity to acknowledge it. And we are 3 years in, going into starting the 4th year. And I would say it's a good relationship. It's a good friendship in that we've been able to support each other in a good way to get through this first year of the pandemic. So I wish you all good health and stay safe during this continued time of the pandemic. Haitsapka.
Haitchka. Thank you very much. Je vous remercie, Rosalind. YVR is an essential service. Just like roads and bridges, the airport stays open and plays an important role as a critical piece of infrastructure, facilitating cargo as a vital supply line, which includes vaccines, personal protective equipment, and other pandemic response goods, to being emergency air support and also helping Canadians travel home. I couldn't be more proud of our team that rallied and came together in so many important ways in 2020 under the stewardship of Tamara, and in particular, how the team demonstrated community leadership beyond the airport, from a COVID testing site and a rapid test pilot to providing critical manpower to vaccination centers across the Lower Mainland. Throughout the year, the team constantly pushed to be more innovative and sustainable in service of our region. A special thank you to our operations and maintenance team and every single employee who kept our airport operating 24/7 and decreased the footprint of the terminal and facilities to reduce costs. I would also like to extend a sincere thank you to the many others who contributed to YVR, such as our customers, business partners, governments, and community. And in our community, a special shout out to the hardworking frontline staff, healthcare workers, not only in our province, but in our country and across the world. They are working tirelessly to keep us all safe every day. Now, before I turn the presentation over to Tamara and Diana to talk more about what we accomplished together in 2020, I have some formal responsibilities. I'd like to thank the Board of Directors, whose names and photos you see here on the screen. As a non-share capital private corporation, Vancouver Airport Authority operates the airport in service of our community and the economy that supports it. It is this community-appointed Board of Directors that holds us to account. I would also like to acknowledge 2 departing directors whose terms come to an end in 2020, Ken Goosen and Wayne Wright. They have both played a big part and contributed greatly to the oversight of this profit-for-purpose institution, and I thank them on behalf of the board for their service. As well, thank you to our executive team, whose vision inspires us to deliver an exceptional airport experience. You'll see some new faces who joined the leadership team in 2020 in the executive team, including Bill Back, Richard Bede, Andy Margolis, and Christoph Rufenacht. This team works in accordance with our highest standards, supporting a foundation of transparent, ethical, and sustainable behavior. I am now pleased to present the YVR 2020 Annual and Sustainability Report. When we looked at how to characterize and report on 2020, we realized that we wanted to document the year in a very different way. We also recognize that YVR is a reflection of the thousands of Sea Island employees and businesses, as well as our customers and our community. So instead of reporting through our own lens, we asked six partners to tell their story in their own words. So thank you to our partners at the Province of British Columbia, Air Canada, Bioport YVR, Stem Cell Technology, Iskeo Air, and World Duty Free for your participation. The full report, including our financial statements, was published on our website May 7th. I will also mention that following Tamara and Diana's presentation, there will be a question and answer period where we will take your questions live and also answer those submitted in advance. Après la présentation de Tamara et Diana, il restera du temps pour les questions, y compris celles soumises à l'avance. C'est maintenant avec plaisir. It is now my pleasure to introduce Tamara Vrooman, President and CEO.
Merci beaucoup, Annalisa. Thank you very much for that excellent overview and warm introduction. Bonjour tout le monde. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us as we talk a bit about a year that was unlike any other, the results that we achieved collectively, and our vision for the future. You know, YVR is a unique entity in our region. We are neither public nor private, but we are in fact a non-share capital private corporation that operates YVR in the public interest, ultimately on behalf of our shareholder and landlord, the Government of Canada. And you know, nobody builds an airport as an end unto itself. We exist for the sole purpose of serving our community and the economy that supports it. And at the heart of this work, of course, it's about buildings and planes and machinery and equipment and technology. But at the heart of this business, it's all about people. And that really shone through more than ever in 2020 as we pivoted our business and had to think about new ways of working in order to support each other, to support our passengers, to support our customers, to support our coworkers, and to support the public. You know, 2020 was a year like no other, as Annalisa said. We've come off a year of 11 years in a row being named the best airport in North America. But what does the best airport look like in a pandemic? Well, 2020 showed us that the success that we had created over a decade was going to come in handy as we focused on pivoting in order to address the challenges that 2020 presented. Let me talk to you a little bit about what some of those challenges were. People have asked me, is it really as bad as people say for aviation and the travel industry? Well, 2020 numbers show that it was a pretty grim year. We declined to 7.3 million passengers in 2020, off a historic high of almost 29 million. And in fact, that doesn't tell the whole story because, of course, January and February of 2020, which seems so long ago, were actually normal before we hit the pandemic in full swing in March. And then April saw by far the worst month in 2020, with travel down 95% at YVR. Aircraft movements were down 48%, and the bright spot, relatively speaking, was cargo, where we had actually only a 19% decline. Although those carriers that are traveling just full freight, so no passengers, just cargo only, actually saw a great year in 2020, the highest ever, up 24% year over year from 2019. I think that reflects what we all see, which is the fact that purchasing behaviors have changed, but also the vital needs that aviation supply chain and freight provides in supporting our region through flying in PPE, vaccines, and other important goods. I think what's really important, though, is to know that the overall impact that we create as an airport in terms of the economy is a vital part of our past and is even more important going forward. We've included some numbers here just so you get a sense of the economic impact that YVR has historically provided and that we're working very hard to rebuild as we think about reopening and getting back to business. Over $20 billion in economic impact, 10 billion in GDP, over 26,000 jobs here at YVR, and over 126,000 indirect jobs throughout the region. You will see on screen a video of one of the very early things that we had to adapt to in 2020. It was a flight that we called Canada One, the first Canadian repatriation flight to touch down at YVR, thus showing really the very essential nature of an airport, that in times of need, Canadians needed to be brought back home from abroad, and really the only way to do that efficiently and effectively is through a connected aviation hub, which of course YVR is. By May 2020, approximately 36 flights across 10 airlines. Since then, we have over 50 flights supported by 13 airlines have participated in the repatriation effort. And we really want to thank our airline colleagues for that very important work. While our role as a connecting hub for Asia to the Americas will continue, the pandemic has shown the need to move beyond this as the sole focus to one where aligned to the future growth and the needs of our community and economy. We'll be talking a lot more this month and going forward in our new strategy, which is focused on YVR becoming the gateway to the new economy. Investing in technology, investing in clean tech, supporting our operations and our partners to create even broader community, environmental and economic impact through jobs and economic activity. Well, how will we do it? We'll do it by always following our core values, and by doing the right thing, doing it well, and committing to doing it sustainably. As I said at the outset, YVR really is a people business. And throughout 2020, those people really shone through. And I'd like to take a moment before going through our operating results in detail to talk a bit about the people who work at YVR. A more dedicated group of people I don't think I've encountered in my entire career. Whether they're people working on the ramp, whether they're working in one of our concessions, whether they're working in our ops center, on the floor, and our maintenance team, and our planning team, environment, emergency services, finance, legal, and everybody in between, their sole focus is making sure that we fulfill our mandate to serve our community and the economy that supports it. And like so many workplaces over 2020, ours saw a tremendous change. And I want to begin by thanking all of the employees at YVR for their resilience, for their dedication, and for their focus in delivering an exceptional experience in the most difficult of circumstances. Some of the things that we had to endure are the things that were common across many parts of the economy, unfortunately, in 2020, changing the way we work with work from home, as well as different shifts, as well as reducing our overall workforce. YVR reduced our workforce by 25% during the first half of 2020. Always a difficult decision to say goodbye to peers and coworkers who have been so much a part of our success. And I want to particularly thank those who were with us and who no longer are, and wish them well in their future endeavors. We're a better airport because of the service that you gave to us. In terms of some of the things that we had to change in 2020, many are very, very familiar to us now, from hand sanitizer to plexiglass to masks to social distancing to extra cleaning and everything in between. But you will remember at the beginning of 2020, some of this was quite new. And so I'm very pleased with the way that our folks took the take care messaging, making sure that people who had to travel for essential medical or work reasons knew what to expect when they came to our airport. I'm also very pleased to see that so far the data has shown that there have been no active transmissions of COVID as a result of transiting through our airport. We put the protocols in place with a very core feature in mind, which was to focus on clarity of communication, focus on the needs of our passengers, and making sure they were safe and comfortable throughout their journey. That resulted in one of our key metrics maintaining its usual high rating, which is unusual in a pandemic, and that's our customer satisfaction score. At 4.33 out of 5, that means that almost 90% of all of those surveyed who are transiting our airport in 2020 reported that they were satisfied or highly satisfied with the services we provide. And we thank you for your confidence, and we're going to continue to work hard to maintain that high score. We also took care to take our resources and the expertise that we had and put it not only in service of our essential service operations, but in service of the community at large. And so, you know, when not very many people are flying and you see passenger and movements down by over 90%, there's a lot of excess capacity here at the airport. And so we started to think, well, what can we do with that capacity? And so I'm very pleased with some of the initiatives that we put in service of community in 2020. First, we took our long-term parking lot, which we didn't need for 2020, and we made it available to the Vancouver Coastal Health Authority, creating the largest and, I understand, still most efficient drive-through COVID testing facility in our region. We also partnered with WestJet and the University of British Columbia and St. Paul's Hospital to do a rapid antigen test study. We could see that by the middle of last year, there was going to need to be a variety of different tests and applications while we waited for vaccines to be in place to be able to rebuild our own industry, but also have other uses in community as well. And so thank you to the 600 volunteers who participated as passengers in our rapid antigen test study. It was very successful, and we were able to use that data and share it with the health authorities and other institutions so that they could make decisions with respect to rapid testing in their environments. And I'm particularly pleased that our pilot was used as a scientific basis to allow rapid testing in long-term care facilities, a much needed sector that we needed to support. And then while this is a little bit of a 2021 effort, it still speaks to our ethos to serve community. We also were able to call back over 77 employees who would be laid off and furloughed from not only our core operations, but right across the partners, including air carriers at YVR, to participate in staffing the vaccine, one of the early vaccine clinics that Vancouver Coastal set up in Richmond. And then finally, some of the things that YVR has been known for many, many years, we didn't want to make sure that those things didn't fall behind in a year like 2020. And so our annual holiday hamper drive still was able to generate 600 hampers for families in need in the Richmond community in December. As well, an important part of our community is our Sea Island partners and our concessions here at the airport. And those of you who are operating businesses know that 2020 was a very tough year to operate. And while government programs, both at the provincial and federal level, provided some support, we knew that we could do our part as a landlord in order to reduce lease payments and defer them to allow our very important tenants to continue to operate through the pandemic. Equally important, as Annalisa said, is our partnership with Musqueam. You know, the test of a partnership is it's always great in good times, but it's really in challenging times that you see its full value. And I want to pay particular attention and give thanks to our partners at Musqueam who have been excellent, steady, committed partners to our airport throughout 2020. Musqueam were there when we needed them in terms of providing support. They were understanding when many of the Musqueam employment opportunities that we created needed to be eliminated because of the downsizing. And they continue to be steadfast partners as we think about future economic opportunities of mutual benefit going forward. Doing things sustainably is always an important part of our business. And sustainability is both how do we make sure we've got the right people, we've got the right infrastructure, we've got the right finances, and of course, we're doing our best for community and planet to make sure that the whole ecosystem works well together. We focused for sure on our operating costs in 2020, reducing parts of the terminal, consolidating our operations, looking for ways to save on everything from energy costs to other operating costs to make sure that we could offer a sustainable but nonetheless efficient operation in a pandemic with traffic and revenue volumes down by such a historic amount. We also took the opportunity to restructure our finances. You know, we thought that this pandemic, unfortunately, might last a little longer than we first hoped. And so by the time we got to the middle of 2020, we were already talking to our bondholders about waivers for our covenants on our debt that would allow us some flexibility just in case it takes a little longer than we'd hoped for the recovery through to 2023. We are also able, on the back of that, to go out in September to the market to raise an additional $600 million from the market in support of our airport and our airport operations. I'm very pleased to say that the market has great confidence in YVR and in our past performance as well as our future. Because that $600 million was oversubscribed at a rate of about 3-to-1. We could have gone out and secured financing of $1.8 billion, but 600 is what we needed. But that shows tremendous confidence and interest in our airport going forward. So we put that together and we have access to over $1 billion in liquidity, which our CFO will speak to in a little bit more detail. That gives us the flexibility and the ability to meet our obligations while we weather COVID-19 and stay open for the essential services that we need to provide. It also gives us an opportunity to ensure that we don't take our eye off the ball of the future and that we're looking forward for ways that when the economy does come back, we're right there and ready to be the leading partner that those in the region have come to expect. We also took the opportunity to restructure our capital program with some of our facilities being completed, but others being put on hold or terminated as a result of the changing forecast in passenger volumes going forward. And Diana will talk in more detail about that. We've been busy at the airport, even though the airport hasn't been busy. And so we've used this time to focus on things like that you can't do when an airport is full of 29 million passengers a year. And so we've taken time to make sure that the fit and finish of the airport is to the highest quality, doing the small things like replacing tiles and making sure that we've got all the cracks sealed so that we're ready when passenger volumes return. We've also taken the opportunity to make sure that we're continuing to invest and look at ways to secure our performance when it comes to climate and efficiency. And in 2020, we had some significant achievements in terms of our wastewater reduction, our waste decreased, and our waste diversion. We decreased the overall amount of water we used in 2020 by 47%. The overall amount of waste we generated decreased by 65%, and we diverted 52% of waste from the landfill, all part of our focus on environment and strengthening the performance of our organization going forward. In 2020, we became the second airport in Canada to achieve carbon neutrality, and we're not stopping there. We're focusing on what's ahead. Before I play this video for you, I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank the board of directors, whose steadfast guidance has been essential through this time, as well as my colleagues on the executive leadership team, whose wise counsel and thoughtful experience has been essential to guide us through 2020 and beyond. This image that you see here is of the Dark Woods Forest in British Columbia. We selected this project for our carbon offsets because it was important that we invest in British Columbia, the community we serve, and that we chose a project with a high level of environmental integrity as validated by external experts. You can see here that it's a pristine and beautiful piece of wilderness, and the enhancement and reforestation that's happening there not only benefits that region, but helped us achieve carbon neutrality in 2020. So with that, I will turn it over to Diana Vong, our VP of Finance and Chief Financial Officer, to go through our financial results in more detail. Diana.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. As Tamara and Annalisa both outlined, 2020 was a year like no other. We saw passengers decline by over 70%. And when we saw the passenger numbers take a nosedive in March and April of last year, we took swift action to look at our spend and look at how we can secure our finances. In April, as Tamara mentioned, we took on the consolidation of our operations within the terminal, reducing our footprint by about 22%. And we also reduced our operation outside the terminal through our parking operations as well. What that allowed us to do was actually reduce the costs of our customer care, of our baggage operations, as well as our utilities and maintenance for those different areas of the terminal. We also took a look at our capital program and reduced the capital spend for that year by looking at the various projects and suspending it and deferring portions of that program. So how that resulted in our financials, we have a snapshot of our financial outcomes for the year here on the slide. As you can see, our revenue has decreased by 51%, with a resulting $289 million for the year. For our expenses, which consist of our salaries and wages, our goods and services, payments in lieu of taxes, interest and amortization, that decreased by 17% at $416 million for the year. As part of that number, we did have $16 million that we paid due to the suspension of our capital program. So if we took out that $16 million, the reduction in expenses was actually at 21%. On the next line, you can see that we had a write-down cost of $253 million. Now, the majority of that cost was related to the core program that Tamara mentioned earlier. When we canceled the project back in September of last year, the main reason for our cancellation was the uncertainty that we faced on when we would need the capacity for those assets. And so as part of the accounting treatment, we need to take a look at how we reflect that uncertainty on our books. And we do so by reducing the value of those assets on our books through this write-down. This does not, however, take away from the commitment that we have to continue to plan and innovate and look at different ways for us to use those assets and realize the benefits in the future. This brings us to our bottom line with a loss of $380 million for the year. On the right-hand side of the slide, you can see a few other key stats. You can see that our earnings before interest and depreciation was a minus $173 million. You can also see that our capital spend for the year was $395 million, and that is reflective of the reduced capital program that we had in 2020. The good news is within there, we also were able to complete a few of the strategically important projects, including the expansion of our Pier D International Wing, as well as the international to domestic connecting facility. The last stat here is the cash balance. At the end of the year, we ended up with $491 million cash, and I will speak more to that on the next slide. Of course, a key to ensuring that we could continue to operate through this pandemic was to ensure that we had sufficient cash and liquidity to meet our financial needs. You can see here that we have a AA- credit rating. During the year, we did have a one-notch downgrade of that as part of a sector-wide review. However, a AA- continues to be a very strong credit quality. As Tamara mentioned, we were able to achieve a 3-year waiver on our debt covenants, and also were able to get a $600 million financing, some of which was due in 10 years, and some of which is due in 30 years. The great news out of that is, again, the investor confidence that we saw being 3 times oversubscribed, and we were also able to achieve the lowest interest rates across any airport in Canada. In addition, we were able to increase our credit facility to $450 million, which in total gave us over $1 billion of liquidity in 2020. So under Tamara's leadership, we took a very prudent approach to our financial forecast. We identified our financial needs, and we quickly stabilized our finances to ensure that we had the cash and liquidity for us to continue to operate a safe and secure airport through this pandemic. As we look forward to the future, we are very much focused on improving our financial performance. In delivering our 2021 strategic plan, we are going to do so in a more profitable and more financially resilient way. We are continuing to look at ways in which we can operate more efficiently, and we are also looking for ways in which we can diversify our revenues, looking at different industries and sectors, and looking at different ways we can work with our business partner. And as we work towards recovery, we are also looking at not only creating value for the community through financial returns, but also by looking at all pillars of sustainability, which includes our environmental and social and governance aspects of our business. So as we take care for our financial future, we want to be able to do so by taking care of our financial health, taking care of our people and of the community and of our planet all at the same time. And with that, I will pass it back to Annalisa.
Thank you, Tamara and Diana. We are now going to move into the Q&A portion of the meeting. We now have until 3:55 p.m. for questions. If we do not have time for all of them, answers will be posted on our website. Nous avons maintenant jusqu'à 15-5 pour les questions. Si nous n'avons pas le temps pour tout, les réponses seront affichées sur notre site web. We've received several questions in advance. Thank you for those who took the time to send them in, and you can also submit questions using the chat function on the right-hand side of your screen. I will now turn it over to Tamara to answer the first question.
Thanks very much, Annalisa, and thanks to Diana for that, for her presentation, and thanks to you for some questions. So a question from a viewer: when will construction be complete on the Templeton project, and how are you managing the impacts of construction on the surrounding community? So for those of you who may not be familiar, the Templeton is on the southeast portion of YVR, and it's right next to our cargo operations. It also happens to be right next to the very important and historic community of Burkeville. And so we have been doing over this past year a lot of ground preparation work, preparing the earth, pounding, getting lights in, that will create what we hope it will be a wonderful public space of a pathway and some trees and some green space as we prepare the industrial site on the other side. We've had many consultations with the community of Burkeville around what their needs will be, and we think that this park is going to be pretty awesome when we finish it later in 2021. However, there's no doubt about it, when you have heavy machinery right next to a residential community, it is disruptive. And so we're working very hard to make sure that we provide advance notice, that we have dust blankets up, that we're offering alternatives for people to work in different locations if they do have to work from home, to make sure that the disruption is minimized. We do expect this work to conclude later in the year, and that we will be in a place to then think about the facility that will go on top of the prepared site and next to the park that we're building. But thanks very much for that question. Then we have some advanced questions from David Barnes. David, thank you very much for reaching out to us. You're one of our most avid readers of our material, and really appreciate your attention to the work of the airport and the interest that you show in our work. Question from David: how many airport employees were brought back to work under the vaccination effort with Vancouver Coastal Health? How many are from your partners? So thanks, David. That question refers to the vaccine clinic that I talked about that was established earlier this year in 2021. 77 total staff that came from 22 partners across the island, which we think is just great in order to bring back the staff. When you think about it, our staff speak different languages. They know how to serve people who might be a little bit anxious in a customer service way, very good at taking information in a discreet way and settling people and getting answer to their questions, all of which is needed to run a vaccination clinic to allow the healthcare staff to do their work. So thanks to all of the employees across the island that put up their hand to be part of that effort. Another question: who has responsibility for environmental and community liaison portfolios under the executive changes? I have accountability through the Office of the CEO for the environmental and climate portfolio, and our Vice President of People and Brand, Richard Bede, has accountability for our community liaison portfolio. An advanced question from Twitter. Thanks, D. Narang. Are you expecting new routes to Europe will the A380 return? So in terms of routes to Europe, we certainly have a number of routes, as you probably know, that have been well established over 44 in normal times. We continue to look for opportunities, but just on the 2nd of May, you probably saw that Turkish Airlines is coming to YVR and had its inaugural flight from Istanbul to YVR. Turkish is an excellent airline. Those of you who have flown it know it's a very good product, but you may not know that it's also one of the largest cargo carriers in the world, flying fully 5% of all cargo that flies around the world flies via Turkish. Istanbul is also a very important connecting hub for Iran and India, two markets that are, of course, essential to our region. Next question, will the A380 return to YVR? Huge shout out to all the plane spotters who are always keen to see that very large, beautiful aircraft land at YVR. Up until the end of 2020, we did have China Southern was flying the A380 into YVR and back to China. And we do hope that British Airways will reinstate its A380 in the coming months. Advanced question from Instagram user Aiden. How many passengers and cargo airlines do you see starting flights to YVR in the next 5 years or so? So again, I referred to this a little bit earlier. When you think about where we were at before we hit the pandemic, we had 44 airlines, 5 float operators, and 5 full cargo freight airlines flying out of YVR. We absolutely are looking forward to building back to that level and beyond as we serve the needs of the region. Question from James. Does YVR support the 2030 Vancouver Winter Olympics bid? Absolutely. We think it's a great opportunity to kickstart the tourism industry and to remind people of the best that our region has to offer. I also think it's absolutely brilliant that we're able to use the infrastructure that already exists to show that Olympics can be a sustainable event, reusing what's already in place and creating great economic and community and cultural growth at the same time. Advanced question from Instagram user Karen. How will YVR be able to provide more space to air cargo handling companies in the future? Cargo has absolutely been an important part of our past, but it's an even bigger part of our future. You know, when you think about how many things have changed with the pandemic, some of which we hope are temporary, but some will likely be permanent. And certainly a few things, understanding the importance of supply chains and the fact that the highest value goods actually fly by air. You know, almost every single vaccine that's entered our country has come in via an airplane, proving the absolute essential nature of a well-connected cargo aviation network. We also know that purchasing patterns have changed, and more people are buying things online, not just via big box retailers, but also some of our smallest businesses and artisans are finding whole new markets being able to be accessed through the supply chain and through the internet and e-commerce. We're keen to support that economic growth. We know that we have more work to do to support the space needs, both for carriers and for those in the cargo industry. And we're absolutely working on expanding that, digitizing it, modernizing it, and having more services, more facilities, and more efficiency coming to our cargo operations. More advanced questions from David Barnes. There looks like there's a group here, David, that are on our financial statements and sort of financial in nature. So maybe I'll take those all at once. The consolidated financial statements show a sum of $92.7 million budgeted for ongoing or incomplete capital projects. What capital projects are still going forward? So I talked a little bit about some of the ones that have gone forward. So Pier D completion has gone forward. Some of our RISA projects have gone forward, South Airfield lighting, as well as some general maintenance projects. And because we suspended the Central Utilities building and the parkade in our core project, we've had to do some safety stabilization, landscaping work around the core infrastructure. What was the cost of the audit completed by accounting firm Ernst & Young in 2020? It was a little over $200,000. Other questions? Why did sums owed to the BC Ministry of Finance increase from $378,000 in 2019 to $860,000 in 2020? Taxes, my friend, that's what that was. So you may recall that there was a change in the way that medical services premiums were calculated in the province of British Columbia. Those went away and they were replaced with the employer's health tax, and this reflects that change. What is the current balance of the Airport Authority's AIF account, and how quickly is it depleted? So our capital expenditures far exceed the amount of revenue we collect in the AIF, so there's no balance in that account. Is information available on the contracts that were awarded by the Airport Authority without tendering processes? So this is sole sourcing. Yes, we provide a link to all sole source, try and say that quickly 5 times, sole source contracts in our annual report and our accountability report on page 12. I encourage you just to hit that link and you'll see all the information there. Question from Anonymous. Earlier this year, there was an initiative announced internally to fund a $300,000 art piece in recognition of Craig Richmond. Could you please advise the rationale for this commemoration? Who approved it, the board of executives, and when will it be completed? I'm happy to take this, Annalisa, and happy to have you add something if you want. It is a tradition in the airports and in our sector to acknowledge leaders. And whether it's the leadership of Indigenous people through the polls and through the posts that we hope to install from Musqueam, whether it's community leadership through Chester Johnson and Chester Johnson Park, or whether it's executive leadership through Larry Bird Flight Path Park, the tradition of really making permanent symbols that recognize leadership is part of our culture, it's part of our history, and it's absolutely part of our future. Since my predecessor, Craig, had such a key role in the really very future-forward agreement with Musqueam, the Sustainability and Friendship Agreement, Musqueam were keen to acknowledge his leadership in partnership with the airport. And so in that way, we were able to create a canoe that was carved for the first time in many, many years by the community in Musqueam in recognition of their culture and their history and the role that Craig played in connecting 2 partners on Sea Island at our airport. That's what the 300,000 is all about, and we're looking for opportunities to install the canoe in a place where the public can learn from it as part of our commitment to community, as part of our commitment to leadership, and part of our commitment to Indigenous culture and the Musqueam. Advanced question from Chris G. Many major cities around the world, like Hong Kong and New York, are planning air taxi drone services to and from the airport. Anything similar for YVR? Absolutely. We're in conversations right now with a drone operator and a air carrier and a local well-known research university around where there might be opportunities for us to start to understand how drones can be used in the airspace. We also know that Navigation Canada is going to be doing work around the aerodrome and the airspace around YVR. And so now is the perfect time to think about how drones fit into a modern airport going forward. So stay tuned. Advanced question from Twitter user at DBROUW87. Has the pandemic made airports reevaluate the number of flights required, CO2, GHG? Before the pandemic started, there's lots of questions about the climate impacts of aviation and the frequency of flying. But what I've said to my folks is that carbon is the enemy, aviation isn't. And so we really have to focus on ways that we can eliminate carbon. That's why we decided earlier this year, actually it was late last year probably, as part of our planning process, that we would take our commitment to be net zero in 2050 and move it ahead by 20 years, showing our commitment to reduce our footprint, to support our air carriers through sustainable aviation fuel, and to do our part to lead not only the country, but the continent in terms of reducing the effects of fossil fuels from our industry. So we're going to be talking a lot more about that, but we don't see that there needs to be a trade-off between making sure that vital connections are available through aviation and an air hub at the same time, a commitment to reducing GHGs. Advanced question from Instagram user Avia Matt. How does the airport help with Canada and BC's economy and infrastructure? Thanks, Avia. You saw some of the stats around the fact that we're a large economic generator, a lot of goods and services, people and ideas transit through our airport. We think there's an opportunity, though, going forward to have an even larger impact on our economy by taking what is a physical hub and ensuring that it's a digital and business hub as well. And I'd encourage you to check out through Business in Vancouver and also on our YVR website, our new initiative on the Innovation Hub at YVR talks a lot about how we see our role expanding in terms of growing the economy and supporting it. This will probably be the last question. And then, as Annalisa said, for those of you who didn't get their questions answered, we'll make sure to try and answer them online. I would also tell you that my email, tamara_vrooman@yvr.ca, is on our website. It really is me. It does come to me. I'm happy to answer your questions or take your comments and suggestions for ways we can improve directly at any time. Last question from Richard. Will we ever be able to get on the flights that come through YVR en route to Tahiti? Yeah, it's so hard to see that Tahiti Nui and some of those other French carriers that come through here on technical stops on their way from Paris to Tahiti. At this time, we're not able to, but we're working on it. We think it's a prime opportunity to allow local people to get on those flights and be able to transit to French Polynesia when the time is right to do so. So absolutely, I look out my window and see those planes every single day and think the same thing. It's something we're working on. Thanks so much for that question. And so now I'd like to take just a few minutes before turning it over to Annalisa to talk about the future. We know that the path to a post-pandemic world cannot go over, around, or alongside COVID. The only way to go forward is to go through. And I think you've seen that our results in 2020 show how we've been navigating the effects of the pandemic on our business. But it also gives us a once-in-a-generation opportunity to take a couple of steps back and look at everything we do as an organization end-to-end in order to take that next step forward. And as I mentioned earlier, we've been using this somewhat quieter time at YVR to do just that. We're going to be focusing on what we need to do to support the future growth in our region. Everything from making our airport more efficient, to welcoming more local businesses as part of our procurement process, to partnering with Musqueam and beyond. We've taken 2021 to be a year of learning. You know, how do we understand where the greatest opportunities are and what we can do going forward? And we've identified, you know, some key ones. They relate to climate, they relate to digitization and innovation, and they relate to participating in the new economy. So one of the things that we see as an opportunity, as I said, is we accelerated our net zero commitment from 2050 to 2030. We think there's a huge opportunity given the size of our infrastructure, everything from electrifying our fleet to energy storage and regeneration, to the way that we run our buildings, to the light sensors and smart and Internet of Things, to digitizing our passenger experience, to giving AI and data to our cargo operators to improve both the efficiency but also the climate and idling impacts of our cargo operations. There's a huge opportunity to move forward on climate. We know we already are recognized as a leader in this area, and we can think about Harbour Air, our partner float air carrier that had the first battery operated commercial flight right here out of YVR. And there's a lot more that we can do as really the entire world starts to think about how to address a more sustainable future and what we need to do to future-proof our operations to make sure we're ready for that future. We also know that the digital world is, just like this meeting suggests, is here to stay. And so we did take the opportunity when things were quieter here to create a full digital twin of our airport. We are the first airport in North America to fully digitally map both externally, our operations across Sea Island, as well as internally. And this is a huge asset for us as it allows us to understand and model and partner with the technical infrastructure and digital infrastructure in the same way we do with the physical infrastructure. You know, because there weren't that many planes flying, we were able to create also one of the highest quality digital twins in any context, let alone aviation and airport, because we're able to fly at 500 feet. And you see the helicopter here that did just that, mapping the entire Sea Island and surrounding community to 2 center by 2 centimeter units, which means we get an incredible amount of detail. We've made this platform available as a community asset through our innovation at YVR Hub, inviting local businesses and Canadian businesses alike to come and help us solution for some of the challenges we face. In so doing, being able to get YVR as that key reference on their business CVs and to sell that out to Canada and internationally. And we've had tremendous excitement about that piece of work. And I think it really just shows how we can go beyond just a physical connection hub to connecting digitally and growing the economy as well. So the last thing I want to leave you with is, I'll be honest, it's a little bit unfair because you're going to want to be in this space at the first opportunity. This is our fully complete, but it is yet unopened to the public, international terminal. It reflects the best of who we are as a region, as well as showcasing the way to the future. This imagery is generated by the digital twin and shows you the value of how clearly we can see our airport with this technology. You'll see in the foreground Musqueam imagery that then defines the space where we have space that when you walk into it, you can smell the sea air. There's flora and fauna from around our region. And we think it's the perfect way for people to be able to decompress and relax, breathe that last breath of West Coast air in before that long international flight. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a feast for the senses, and its design is award-winning and second to none. We can't wait to welcome you back to YVR. And when we do, you can count on the fact that we'll be ready. And with that, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and also turn it back to our chair, Annalisa King. Thanks so much.
And my last official task is to close the meeting. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention, and we will draw this meeting to a close. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please visit our website for further question and answers, and we'll see you soon.